All right. Well, welcome to all three of you, three excellent films. We have Dana Johnson, who directed Luck in Love, a rodeo story, and Michelle Fenn, who directed Beyond the Herd, and Milo Gladstein, who directed Roughstock, Race for the Job. So, yep, very glad to have you guys here. Personally, I am from Minnesota, from the city, and from Minneapolis, and I have zero exposure to the world of cowboys, rodeos, etc. And so I was very fascinated and very grateful to all three of you for your films. They were windows into these very intriguing worlds, and just getting to know a lot of the people intimately, I thought was just exactly what the film festival is about, these glimpses and windows into different worlds that you might not have access to otherwise. So thank you for that. Milo, I want to start with you. From what I understand, you also come from a background with zero exposure to this world. So what got you into this world, and why did you want to make this film?
Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming, and thanks for enjoying the films. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, probably the last place you'd ever expect anyone to come from and make a rodeo film. I recently graduated Colorado State University and made this film during my senior year there. I was curious because growing up in Los Angeles, cowboys don't exist. It's not really a thing there. And this is a world that only exists in movies and on TV shows. And I was really curious about this idea of, does this really exist still anymore, and who are these people? Which led me to meeting the Ferguson family and spending time all over the state of Colorado with different ranchers, cowboys, stock contractors, things like that. And throughout that time, not only did I learn that this exists and is very much still alive, but I wanted to represent to people like me who've never stepped foot in a rodeo arena what it means to be a true cowboy. So.
Okay, and Michelle, the mustangs, incredibly fascinating world. I had no idea we had wild horses in our country still. I'm fascinated by the chemistry and the dynamic between the couple, Amber and Isidro, and Isidro's sort of Zen character, and the opposite of that. And Amber, could you say a little more about their characters and how you saw them interact and pull off what they're doing with their work?
Sure. When this started, I thought Isidro was going to talk more about the discrimination that he had faced being a Mexican-American cowboy, and that was what drew me into the story, was a Facebook post that Amber had put on and drew me in. And it was interesting. He actually didn't really want to talk much about it. I think him growing up in Mexico, he just has a different experience than what Amber did, and Amber had a much different lived experience with people treating her much harsher. And when it happens to Isidro now, it kind of brushes off of him, whereas Amber has had it since she was a kid. So she's a lot grittier. I think she's had to deal with a little bit more adversity in terms of dealing with that discrimination in her life. And the two of them, and watching them work with horses, is really fascinating. Amber is a great horsewoman as well, but the two of them together combine this lovely ebb and flow of Amber's the strong business head. She does a really good job managing the business, managing the horses, managing the schedule, and she does train as well. And then you have Isidro, who's just a very, like you mentioned, very zen, very down to earth. Watching him work with horses in person it's absolutely fascinating. You feel very calm and very at ease, even when horses are bucking and rearing at him. He just takes it in stride, and I think that's how they work so well together, is he takes everything in stride, and it works well with her, who pushes forward and is a little bit more gritty and a little bit hardened. But she's also a lovely person as well. I just think they have different backgrounds, and it's shaped how they interact and how forcefully and confidently they both take on different parts of their lives in their training.
Yeah, they truly complement each other. So thinking of Luck in Love, we see Tanner in pretty vulnerable situations. He's very open about his challenges, and especially what's going to happen when he can't really compete anymore, and you see him on the road, and there's a lot of vulnerability there. So I'd like to know one, how you know him and his family and how you develop that rapport where he and they also trusted you to sort of just be open with what's going on and the sacrifices involved in the realm that he's, I would call his vocation, but yeah, in this realm that he's working in.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. This is a beautiful festival. And as far as Tanner goes, I followed him for about a year. And I would say every single time I filmed with him, he opened up a little bit more. And it wasn't until my very last interview with him, which was in December here in Billings at the rodeo, at the Memorial Rodeo, that he gave me the answer that I was actually looking for. So it did take a long time to get that trust, and I think that for a rodeo guy, it's about being kind of tough and having a facade, and that side of Tanner was something I wasn't interested in seeing as a filmmaker, so I made the choice to use mostly not sound stuff from him instead of his sit-down interviews, which weren't as compelling, in my opinion. So I think it was a combination of just like spending time, but also using stuff that he didn't know that we were gonna use.
Awesome, yeah, really nice intimate moments. We are gonna have a few minutes for audience questions, so get ready for that. I just wanna, ask all of you if either or any of you wanna answer. It seems like there's a lot of physical sacrifice in working with animals, and especially with rodeos, and I wonder if any of you guys have anything to say about the character and the qualities of people who are drawn to that life, and just as I mentioned before, it seems like it's more of a vocation than a career, and so yeah, just the amount of sacrifice when you think of a number of other jobs which sort of demand our time but very little else, this demands so much. So anything any of you want to say about that?
I can't speak to a rodeo perspective, but as a lifelong horsewoman myself, it's a lifelong sport, hobby, endeavor. You are constantly learning, you're constantly evolving. But, you know, and it is at times backbreaking labor to care for horses, especially when you have as many as Amber and Isidro have, and I'm sure at the rodeos where they have lots of horses. But when you're on the back of a horse, it's quiet. It's one of the few places I've ever experienced just complete focus on what you're doing. They said in the last film where you look is where you're going. It's very true on horse. If you look down, you're going down. If you look this way, if you look this way, you're so interconnected with this animal that's underneath you. And it's a really powerful feeling to be in a kind of a symbiotic relationship, but you have to let go and be really focused and committed to it. So it's a nice change of pace, I think, from our daily lives and what we experience, especially me as a full-time filmmaker. You know, I looked at Amber, I was like, I don't know how you do this full-time with how many horses you have. She looked at me, she's like, I don't know how you do this work full-time, you know. So I think it's a mutual admiration for me, at least, for people who run ranches and take care of multiple horses at a time.
Yeah, so speaking to that as well, rodeo is more than just a sport to these people. This is their life. And as you noticed in all four of the films, there are old people, there are young people, there are babies, there's everybody in between. So people who grow up, or whether you grow up in it or end up in rodeo, rodeo is your life forever. A lot of those days going to deer trail with the Ferguson family, those were 15-hour days of shooting and things like that. And to them, that's nothing, and that's just a normal day for them, and they wake up the next day and they go to a rodeo again the next day, which is almost unbelievable. And there's a reason why Tyler Ferguson is in his 30s, and he's one of the older guys riding on the circuit that he rides on at the moment. And just because, you know, you might end riding professional bareback, you know, at 35, whatever it may be, doesn't mean that you're going to finish rodeo and your whole life. So.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions now for any of these three filmmakers? All right, we'll start way in the back, and please shout.
I wanted him to talk about the end, and he doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to think about it, and he is honestly offended if you ask him about it. So it was a little dicey, and I I don't know if I just got him in the right moment or whatever, but he basically at the very end told me his goal is to make it to 2 more, and that was hard to get. Like he doesn't want to say that he has like an end in sight. And I don't know if he's ready to accept it, honestly. He's not. Let's be honest, he's not ready. And I don't know what life is going to look like for him after, but that was the compelling part about this story is here's somebody really close to the end, and what's going to happen? What's going to happen to them? And I guess that remains to be seen.
I think we had one mid. Go ahead. Yeah, you. Okay, let's see if we can give a chance for them to answer. Does anybody have any reflections on that part of it?
Yeah, so to take a stab at your question here, again, for me personally, somebody who did not grow up around horses or anything like that, that was something that I was personally curious about, and it's something that a lot of people have questions about. I don't want to make a blanket statement and speak for everybody who owns horses, everybody who's a stock contractor. My film focuses on a very specific group of people within northern Colorado. Most of the stock shown in my film personally was from Mr. J.D. Ford, and I spent every weekend for a year pretty much at his place. He's bucked bulls and horses at a practice pen at his place in Brighton, Colorado for the last 29 years. I believe personally that he treats those animals the best that you can possibly treat those animals. Now, going from that, there are stock contractors that probably treat their animals like shit. I'm sure there are. But from what I noticed in the community that I saw, I believe that Mr. Ford treated his animals the best he possibly could.
So I think that what's interesting is I've done a couple horse documentaries. My first one was called The Horse Relative, and it was about the creation of horse regalia for ceremonial purposes. And the horse mask and the horse pieces being put on the horse, it makes them act differently. Like they perk up, they have like a different energy, they start making different noises, like they understand like the ceremony and the specialness of the horse regalia being put on them. And when I was in the chutes with Tanner, as they were preparing to buck, I saw the horses do the same thing as when the horse regalia was been put on them. It's like they understood that what they were about to do was performative and special, and to me, it felt like they were part of, like they understood, and they were excited about it, but I can't read a horse's mind. And also, I think that that could be a totally different documentary about the treatment of animals, but in Tanner's documentary, it was more about Tanner's life journey than the actual, it wasn't really even a story about rodeo. It was just a story about a person, I think.
Yeah, that's a huge topic. I mean, fair question. It's, you know, it's definitely relevant to this this topic. But yeah, a whole another documentary or 10 can be made to sort of go into the nuance of the relationship between people and animals generally, etc. I see another hand way in the back. Let's try to get to this before the next screening starts.
Yeah, so my producer, Hema, so she's fluent in Spanish. So I gave him the option of what he was most comfortable in, and he wanted to speak in English. It was really important to him. It's a great question, though. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the audience? I just want to ask you guys if there's anything in the filmmaking process that you either was exceptionally challenging or something you're very proud of, or anything else you want to say about the films. that we might not even know what to ask. There's some gold mines in there.
So I work for PBS. I've been working for PBS for 14 years, and I've done over 1,000 interviews. I've made hundreds of documentaries, and I'd say Luck and Love is my favorite. People always ask which one is my favorite, and that's my favorite so far. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's really a work of love for me.
I want to acknowledge the passion that everybody has for horses in the horse industry. I think it can be very controversial. I'm actually very surprised nobody asked about wild horses and the different, because that can also be very polarizing of, should we have wild horses? How should we manage them? Should we manage them? And if you guys are interested in hearing more, there's a really lovely documentary called Wild Beauty. It takes a very specific approach, a little bit more anti-BLM. There's other documentaries that are a little bit more pro-BLM. Unbranded's one of the ones I think that's a little bit more neutral. But I just wanted to acknowledge the passion that everybody has for horses and animals, and everybody has different opinions. And I just encourage you, if there's something that you're very passionate about when it comes to animals, to just pursue that passion and pursue the legislation or the ideas and what makes you most comfortable with horses, and just get as educated as you possibly can when it comes to animal welfare, and make sure that you fully understand everything. And I always really appreciate the passion that people have for animals and for horses.
I think for me, the big thing being, I'm sure you all noticed there were a lot of photos in my documentary. I'm primarily a photographer. I work in a newspaper in Wyoming as a photojournalist. This was my first film. The project originally started out as a photo story for the newspaper I'd worked at the time. And there is a full photo gallery that is kind of part of the same project. But I think for me, just really diving in and trying to make a film, I'm really happy with how this one turned out, and I can't wait to make another one.
All right, thank you all so much for your films and for being here with us. If you guys have any more questions, you can find them in either one of the next cinemas or in the reception area out front. So thank you all for attending.